Every once in a while, I get an anime that I feel like I'm out of my lane talking about.
If I want to be at the top of the social food chain here, I've got to crank my cuteness up to 11.
This is one of those times.
You have beautiful hair, President. I've always loved it. Long and straight and silky. I'd trade my curls for hair like yours in a heartbeat.
Definitely one of those times. Hello and welcome again to Oldtaku New Tricks, where today we're playing catch-up of sorts. Since the industry had to grind to a halt for reasons out of their control, a lot of anime production was stymied, and it still kind of is. While this does throw a wrench into the gears of Oldtaku New Tricks, this also allows us for the chance to take a look at some recent shows that we didn't get around to. Namely, the 2018 anime Citrus, animated by Studio Passion, who are responsible for the new Higurashi series that's been delayed to October, as well as the Floating in Limbo Being Banded OVA that was supposed to come out in 2019. Once again, thank you 2020. I was always curious, so to speak, about this title because it kept cropping up during my initial research about what kinds of anime the kids are watching these days. And when I found out that it was Yuri, I understood. To me, Citrus seemed like the kind of seminal anime that every generation of fans gravitate toward when it comes to their own sexuality. Whether you just want to see girls lock lips, or you're on board for a story about girls discovering their own sexual awakenings and romantic feelings, there's a lot at the table for many a frustrated teenage otaku. And true to form, this does fulfill that need, as well as reminding me why I left that part of my fandom a long time ago.
Look at her. She's really cute when she's sleeping.
It's your typical setup as Yuzu Aihara, get it because yuzu is a kind of citrus fruit, is dealing with your everyday anime heroine problems. It's her first day of school as a transfer student, her mother having married another man who Yuzu's never seen before.
So, do I finally get to meet my new dad tonight?
Oh, about that. He sort of had to leave for the other side of the world.
Okay. And being the fashion-minded, outgoing girl that she is, her nature clashes with the obviously conservative school and student body, though the council president, May, has taken a peculiar shine to her, in her own way.
Hey, what are you doing?
But in a swerve that could only happen in anime, Yuzu is utterly shocked to find out that not only does she harbor confusing feelings for May, but May just so happens to be her newly minted stepsister.
We're a family now, remember? Be nice to your sister, Yuzu!
Let's see, the protagonist is a transfer student who stands out from the crowd, and whose love interest shares not only the same sex, but also a familial relationship. Now, all I need is...
And I don't care if you are head over heels in love with her, cause Mei doesn't see you as anything more than her big sister, and she never will.
Ah! Romantic rival! Bingo! That Citrus, for the most part, follows the well-worn path that many a tread before is not the most shocking of news, as romantic anime is a genre that is, overall, very, very trope-dependent. That, in of itself, isn't a bad thing. You know, if that's what you're looking for. The romance genre has constructed itself with these tropes by necessity, since the long-form medium of manga and anime demands that the story being told is able to hold a person's interest for several chapters and/or episodes. Hence why the romance that the story focuses on is often fraught with melodrama and bizarre personal circumstances that create intrigue for the audience. After all, it's kind of hard to hold someone's attention when your story is about a couple that immediately get along when they meet, and their story is told without much in the way of personal drama or hang-ups. A dramatic plot needs stakes in order for the story to have weight, and there's only so many ways you can do that when your story is about a relationship without straying into the supernatural. That Citrus takes a quasi-forbidden romance angle with the double whammy of also being a lesbian romance seems only appropriate for the necessary dramatic weight. Except, it really doesn't do that.
Why even do something like that?
Well, the way you were looking at me made it clear you wanted to be touched.
By the second episode, Citrus diffuses the weight behind the relationship by having numerous students in this buttoned-up all-girls school be in hormone-fueled same-sex relationships, shrugging them off as, well, we gotta get our rocks off somehow, like 1 out of every 3 girls here are just prison gay.
Wouldn't you want to fool around some and get that kind of experimentation out of your system before you tied the knot too? We're swimming in a sea of raging hormones.
I won't speculate much about how this can fuel the harmful narrative of queer teenagers just going through a phase, as it were, but I will say that this seems kind of counterproductive to their intent. If the point of consternation with Yuzu is her complicated feelings, then why have it so that the environment is apathetic toward her romantic feelings, if not outright conducive? I could see the appeal of having a queer romance story set in a world where the couple in question don't have to be mindful of being ostracized, as escapist fantasy has its place, but I never got the feeling that that was what Citrus was aiming for. It just seems that every time there was a dramatic turn in the plot, the story would just pirouette and immediately undercut it. Mai's grandfather catches them in bed, thinks that Yuzu is attacking Mai, and throws her out of the house, only for him to realize he jumped the gun and apologized after nearly dying the very next episode.
May spoke with me about it the other day. I was being too prideful in so many ways.
Mai has walled herself off from talking with her estranged father for about an entire episode, and then bygones are bygones.
Travel safely. Bye, Dad.
If you were feeling charitable, you could call these mini-arcs, but I ain't here ringing a bell for Toys for Tots, if you catch my drift. Even the kind of, sort of, not really, but too close to be comfortable incest plot feels like an afterthought by the 4th episode, as that dynamic takes a backseat to other, more well-worn tropes such as the romantic rival, or the troublemaking friend who just shows up out of nowhere like she were an OC in a fanfic.
Yuzu. That takes me back. Wonder how she's been.
And as I stated before, these tropes and bits of narrative shorthand have their appeal. But when they're clumped together so haphazardly like this, it's kind of hard to not see them for what they are. Even the premise itself smacks of trope-dependent storytelling, right down to the fact that Yuzu hadn't even met her stepdad, even after her mother married him. I know that this was done so that there could be a surprise when it's revealed that Mai is her stepsister, but my mind backflips like a Jack Russell trying to find the narrative logic behind such a decision. Like, was Yuzu not at the wedding? Why would she marry a guy without even introducing him to her daughter? Hell, why would she marry a guy who, by all outward admissions, has no want or need to even be within the same country as his new wife?
May doesn't understand why, but I can't stay. There's still so much of the world I haven't seen yet.
There's just no rhyme or reason to any of this, just barely thought out setups for our story to plot along. Is the only reason why this anime got any traction at all was because it focused on a lesbian relationship? Oh.
Hey, what?
Oh.
Please dispose of it before...
Oh. If I were to look at it purely on its own terms, I can kind of see where these kinds of scenes are coming from. That these girls here are inexperienced and are fumbling through their feelings, acting on impulse before rationality. And while the show does try to frame what they do as wrong...
But I'll be gentle, though, since it's your first time.
It also feels like they're trying to titillate and shock, which really speaks to how the show views these relationship dynamics. That our lead two come to some tacit understanding of their shared feelings after they spent 5 episodes either groping each other or taking things too far, doesn't wash away the fact that they spent 5 episodes groping each other and taking things too far. Then again, this isn't necessarily out of place, especially when it comes to yaoi or yuri anime. After all, there's a reason why the terms seme and uke were invented. So again, it's trope-ridden to the end. You can rail against the tropes all you want, but at the end of the day, it's almost become a calling card of sorts for the genre. But as I sat there watching Citrus, either rolling my eyes at the near incessant conveniences or just shrugging my shoulders in limp boredom, a thought did occur to me. How is this any different from the anime I used to watch when I was a teenager as an outlet for my own sexual frustrations? And the answer is... it isn't, really. The closest anime I can think of to compare Citrus to is... you're gonna laugh, but love Hina.
Hey, what's the matter now, Naru? What is it?
Don't talk to me like that!
I know, I shudder to think of bringing up that nightmare again, but hear me out. While the base components of their respective stories are different, male lead instead of a female lead, harem character dynamics instead of a singular couple, both anime follow the same tropes and transparent, convenient plot devices to tell their story. A lead couple that teeter-totter between fighting and being lovey-dovey, heavy reliance on unwanted physical contact, romantic rivals, semi-incestuous relationships. I was actually kind of surprised by how much Citrus reminded me of Love Hina, and it also clued me into why this had the impact that it did. Despite my well-documented feelings about the series, I was, at one point in my life, a huge fan of Love Hina. It was one of the very few manga series that I went out of my way to read and collect. I know, cringed, right? But it did speak to me in a way that I felt was missing in my adolescence. Namely, it was my sexual outlet and my way of parsing through my thoughts and feelings towards women and relationships. It's not the healthiest way of doing it by any stretch of the definition, but few outlets are. That I wound up growing up and realizing what kind of garbage that Love Hina was, and still is, feels like a natural conclusion to come to. I had my time with the material, it served its purpose, and now that I know better, I have left it behind. Well, I'm trying to leave it behind, but you know, the job. In that way, I feel like Citrus taps into that same vein, that same shared teenage experience of not knowing who you are or why you suddenly have these thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and feelings of lust and sometimes powerlessness.
Whoa, what just happened? For some reason, that kiss felt way different from all the other ones.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit to find out that Citrus winds up following the exact same path that Love Hina took. That once upon a time ago it had its popular heyday, and then just a few short years later, the fans move on and realize just what kind of hot garbage they used to like when they were young. The story itself might be a rote coming-of-age story, but the meta-text of Citrus reads to me like the natural life cycle of a teenage otaku, finding out who they are and why they feel the way they do. It's dumb, it's exploitative, and it's downright lazy at times, but it fits the mold of what certain teenagers are looking for. But that part of my life has come to an end, and I've moved on. I may not have liked Citrus at all, but I can recognize it for what it is. What about all of you, though? What did you think of Citrus?